All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be after waivers for week 7, 8 fantasy football. Let's see. First and foremost, when we get down to it, didn't get my notes done for after waivers until today. That means I didn't get anything done yesterday when it comes to chasing the dragon. If you're wondering about your chasing the dragon stuff, I don't know anybody that would be listening to this channel that would have not picked up your Commodity Vidals, and I don't know how competitive your league would be where he would be still available speculating on these two guys. Now, remember when we talk about some of these guys that are out there, I'm less interested in some of the ugly RB2s that can't win me a league. I'm always going to be looking at guys from the perspective of, are they going to give me receiving work? Are they attached to a good offense, which means how many opportunities they're going to have to score touchdowns, because chasing touchdowns is a good way to win your league. It's a good way to lose your league when it comes down to that. So if he's available, you're running out of opportunities to be able to win your league out there when it comes to running backs off the waiver wire. And there's a lot of if, buts, and maybes with the Chargers running backs, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, tight ends, if you're going to be chasing your tight ends out there, like Harold Fenton, again, there's going to be if, buts, and maybes behind this. But yeah, I would be interested in him down the line, especially from a chasing the dragon perspective before after waivers clear out there. And the same thing with Michael Mayer out there. With it does look like Brock Bowers is going to miss another week with the bye week coming up in week 8. Now, Rondé Gadsden, again, this is going to be if, buts, and maybes, but I would be aggressive on these guys if you're looking at your tight ends that are available. And then I would put Darnell Washington into the chasing the dragon category. 80% snaps, remains somewhat consistent from 91% snaps in week 4 coming out of that bye. Jordan Whittington, yeah, I would be aggressive on him also with whatever news is going to be going on there out there with Puka. I think he's a 1-to-1 replacement for Puka in the offense. You can see 92% snaps. And here's the and to this. He may be a poor man's Puka, but he's going to do the same stuff that Puka does overall. So you could, and I'll be a little spicy about this, get like double-digit targets. It may all go to Devontae Adams, but again, if you're going to be speculating, and you're going to be speculating on multiple weeks that Puka could be out at this point, even with that bye week coming up here pretty soon. Now, Alec Ao Minor would be another one. Now, finally, I would be aggressive on Alec Ao Minor with the firing of the head coach and then Calvin Ridley in the hamstring. You can go attack that. Some of the defenses that you could go chasing the dragon on would be week 7 Patriots against the Titans, and the variable being like the firing of the head coach could change the outcome of how that offense plays a little bit. I am liking Cam Ward, so just so you are a little bit aware of how I look at that. And then Chiefs going up against the Raiders if they're going to be available. And again, I don't know how competitive your league is. I don't know who's going to be available out there in fantasy football land. All right, let me scroll my notes back up to the top. Other news out there. Week 8 buys. You're going to be looking at the Lions, the Raiders, the Rams, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and the Jags. So that means like click ahead a week and see who you're going to be plugging in for those guys. And be a little bit more aggressive, either chasing the dragon or after waivers based off of your needs, because that's a lot of teams that are going to be on bye for week 8. Week 8 defenses. If JJ McCarthy is back for the Vikings, you're going to be rolling the Chargers against the Vikings. Even though it's Thursday Night Football, never trust Thursday Night Football. Patriots, again, a reason to be a little bit aggressive on the Patriots. Chasing the dragon, going up against the rookie Dylan Gabriel and the Browns. Colts and Titans, and again, remember, the variable of that head coach may change my mind a little bit, but you can't roll the Colts against the Titans. So like if you're going to be picking them up a week early, Eagles, whatever's going on with the Eagles, they are going to be looking at Jackson Dart, so you can be looking at that. If you got the stomach, the Jets and the Bengals, you could go either one on that one. And then finally, to finish all this off, the Falcons may end up being one of those like league winning type of picks that are going to be out there. All right, quarterback, 49ers, let's get into it. No news on Brock Purdy. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. It doesn't really make a difference overall from a fantasy perspective. You can see Mac Jones, 27-39, 347, 2 interceptions in this one. It doesn't probably make a difference for your toys. It probably doesn't make a difference who you roll out there. They're very similar when it comes to your fantasy lineups. Wide receiver room, maybe Slick Rick, maybe not. I don't know either. Jennings gets knocked out. I guess he has like 5 broken ribs in this one. 77% snap, 3 for 1 for 7. And then the other slightly interesting thing before we talk about Kendrick Bourne would be, where's he at? MVS right there, 61% snaps. He jumps all the way up to there. So with your Kendrick Bourne, I imagine at this point you're going to be looking at Jennings being out and Kittle may be back. So I can see Kendrick Bourne and Slick Rick. Maybe if Slick Rick is back. Otherwise, I can imagine Slick Rick is going to get pushed another week, and then you're going to have another one of these like outcomes where he does 11 targets in week 5 and then 9 targets. So like I would be interested in that. Now, this Atlanta defense did look better, I guess, from what everybody was saying on Twitter against the Bills, and this Atlanta defense would be one of the ones that we would be looking to roll. And then because of all the if buts and maybes, like you could be looking at the opposite direction. But like if you're still hurting at wide receiver, Kendrick Bourne, yeah, if he's available, like you could still get that. And a lot of this is going to come down to Wednesday injury reports, and we're not going to have that yet. So the where's he at? Kittle right now is expected to return. It says like whatever that means, and I imagine he may not be at full strength to start off. They might have him on top of a pitch count with Tongs at that point, which would hurt either of those guys coming back. I imagine if Kittle is available, he may get like the higher volume or the higher value snaps compared to Tongs on the field. If you're wondering about all that stuff, take the Vikings off. All right, Bears in this one, and I'll scroll down here. I got to move my water out of the way. Let's see. DeAndre Swift was at 56% snaps in this game. Both him and Monongahela had a red zone opportunity that I wrote down. Monongahela was at 34% snaps. There was a wild Roshan sighting at like 5% snaps in this game. Right there, one carry. When it comes to the wide receiver room, don't know what's going on with DJ Moore. I guess he went to the hospital last night. And then it says like groin, so whatever that means. And then you're looking at like Luther Burden was at 23% snaps, 4 for 451 in this game. But Oldemine, Zach Azaias, whatever, he's at 84% snaps, which is a little surprising considering that like Loveland was back 42% snaps, which is generally in line with what he was doing before the injury. Cole Kmet tumbles all the way to 52% snaps. So like good luck on deciphering all that when it comes to the Bears going forward. Moving on to the Bengals. So we'll talk about Flacco, and I got to go to the Browns to talk about Flacco because that's how it works sometimes. So Joe Flacco, first game after the trade, is coming in, thrown to the Wolves against the Packers, 29-45, 2 touchdowns. I imagine it can only get better because it can't really get too much worse if you have your Bengals shares at this point going on. And this one, so like when it comes to the running backs, you're looking at Chase Brown was at 54% snaps in the game. Got the only red zone opportunity. P. Ryan was at 46% snaps. And again, take this with a grain of salt because even though he got the first carry of the game, they were generally playing from behind. And at that point, like that would explain like why P. Ryan was on the field. Wide receivers, if you can get some type of serviceability out of Flacco and they can remain somewhat competitive until Burrow theoretically could come back this year. Andre Osivas was at 94% snaps. Again, take that with a grain of salt because Gesicki goes down with a pectoral, it says out for a while, whatever that means. Noah Fant jumps to 49% snaps. And again, I probably would be chasing Osivas over your Fants if you're going to be chasing those guys. And then in this one, and then Tanner Hudson right there, concussion, whatever that means. And he did have 25% snaps, 5 for 4 for 10. And a touchdown with all the other shenanigans. But again, I would be chasing Osivas if I really had to. And depending on what goes on with Flacco down the line, and I bring this up with your Osivas shares, this run, week 13 to week 16, when it comes to the Bengals, gets really interesting between like how bad the Ravens have been. Baltimore could be a shootout. There's the Ravens again and the Dolphins. Like this is a really interesting stretch of games, whether it's Osivas or the rest of your Bengals toys, if we can get some type of consistency and they can be like somewhat competitive. All right, Bills on Monday night, they lost out there to the Falcons. And I guess the Falcons look really good in this one. I haven't watched any tape on the Falcons defense, and unless it's scheme related, I probably will not. But I bring this up with the Bills. Is the Falcons jumped out to an early lead and then basically like were able to hang on with the defense to beat the Bills. So sometimes when it like looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's still an RB2. And I bring this up because again, remember, good offense, they got to get receiving work and they got to get red zone opportunities. And if the Bills have particular roles for their teams and they get off a script, because they're behind, they don't care about your fantasy lineup. In this case, because the two other things that happen is 42% snaps, Ty Johnson. So if you can predict that game where the Bills are playing from behind, Ty Johnson is going to get a jump in usage. And then Ray Davis, 4% snaps, but he does go 2 for 19, gets a red zone tug on one of those. It was 19-yarder. So that's how it goes. Wide receiver room for the Bills, if you're wondering. So Josh Palmer goes out with an ankle. You're looking at Curtis Samuel being out with, I think, like neck or something, neck ribs, whatever that is. And then Elijah Moore jumps up to 25% snaps. Shavers at 49% snaps. He did a lot of his damage late in the game. I don't think this is necessarily fantasy relevant, but that's how it got there, 49% snaps. When it comes down to that, and I didn't write anything else down when it comes to the wide receivers for the Bills. Tight end room, Dawson Knox, like late scratch with that oblique. And then Dawson Knox jumps up to 81% snaps. Only does 2 for 1 for 19, but one of those was a red zone tug. And then if you're in deeper, darker dynasty leagues and you're holding on to Jackson Haas, 54% snaps, but no usage in the passing game overall. All right, Broncos. The only kind of interesting thing for me, and this is probably not fantasy related, is Tyler Beatty was out with that shoulder, and then you got like that wild Jaleel McLaughlin siding at 10% snaps. No real difference in the usage for the running backs. Wide receivers, on the other hand, Pat Bryant was at 58% snaps. He's third rounder, I believe it is. Red zone opportunity, Marvin Mims was down 35% snaps. Troy Franklin, 56% snaps. He did have a fumble lost in this game, so this is all stuff to be monitoring about like usage next week between these guys. And I don't really care about the tight ends for the Broncos. I didn't write anything down when it comes to those guys. If you're wondering about all that stuff, was not interested. Browns. First and foremost, when I talk about the Browns, I got to say, like, I imagine that what the Steelers did is they presented the Browns with a, hey, you should throw the ball. And they stacked the box, and that's why you had 52 pass attempts by the Browns, because this was not necessarily a blowout. It was not a particularly close game, but it was an ugly game. And if you throw the ball 52 times, you only complete 29, you go 221, means you're not really being efficient with your downfield shots. I don't know how often you're going to get 52 pass attempts for the Browns. And this is important when we start talking about like the wide receiver usage, like 13 targets for Jerry Jeudy. He had, where's it at? 3 red zone opportunities on top of that. Isaiah Bond was at 87% snaps all the way up there. Did get a red zone opportunity on top of that. And then we can talk about like your tight end. So Njoku does 44% snaps. He has 2 red zone opportunities before he left the game. Fannin was at 80% snaps right here. 10 targets, does get a red zone opportunity. I am not sure that you're going to get a 1-to-1 replacement for Njoku with Fannin in the offense. If you do, then like that's a big deal. We could theoretically talk about like if not unicorn status, but at least like weekly role tight ends as probably the number 2 in the offense. The caveat to this again is I don't know if we're ever going to see like 50 pass attempts for the Browns again this season, and that's why you can see like the aberration when it comes to some of the usage on these guys. So you had to get Njoku injury and then a whole bunch of 50 pass attempts for Fannin to get like 10 targets. So how aggressive I would be on Harold Fannin would depend on like what do I need for the foreseeable future and what my opponent needs. Now, Njoku is one of those guys that have been talked about or linked to potential trades. So this may be like a lot more consistent than we would like to believe when it comes down there if you're going to be aggressive before waivers or after waivers. Now, if you're wondering about your running back room, again, this is why I would speculate that the Steelers presented the Browns with the option to throw the football because they said, hey, your best player is Quinson Judkins, and Judkins does 40% snaps, 12 for 36, and 1 target in this one. He also had a red zone carry. Jerome Ford was at 40% snaps. He had a red zone target, and then Sampson was up to 18% snaps also in this game. So again, tells me that they were throwing a lot to go along with it. And again, sometimes like it don't matter how good a guy is. It just matters like what the usage is. If he ain't getting receiving work and he's not getting like consistent red zone opportunity, like it's just there are other guys I would be aggressive on, and like that's just how it goes. That's why like a guy like Vidal, or even when we talk about the Cardinals here coming up here, why I get so aggressive on certain guys that maybe that doesn't work out, but they have the ability to win a league if they do work out relative to some of the other guys that may be like ugly RB2s that I just don't care about as much. So moving on to the Bucks, Bucky Irving, out for week 7 already. And then you're looking at week 9 bye. I imagine you may not get Bucky until week 10 at this point. If you're wondering about that stuff, not a lot to say about the running backs for the Buccaneers at this point, other than like, yeah, you're still stashing Sean Tucker because you may get that opportunity to win a week because of an injury. Wide receiver room, if you're wondering. So Mike Evans, it says hopeful right there, will be back with that hamstring. They really need him back at this point. Abuka, no news other than he's probably going to miss time with that hamstring. And again, I would imagine at this point, like you're probably not going to see Abuka again until week 10 after the bye. Rest of the wide receivers that I would talk about, let's see, just scrolling down here. You're kind of looking at Cameron Johnson, 49% snaps. He does 4 for 4 for 64 touchdown. Now, he's 5'10", 170. I don't know if they're going to necessarily roll Cameron Johnson out there with your Ty or Tez Johnson and expect these two guys to survive on the outside at their size. So Tez Johnson, he does 72% snaps, 3 for 1 for 45 and a touchdown. So if you're chasing the snap share, it would be Tez Johnson. And this is a good offense. So like chasing pieces of good offense is not a bad idea. If you're chasing the production, it would be Cameron Johnson. And I imagine this is all going to come down to snap share with Mike Evans. And if Mike Evans is back and how healthy he is, if he does come back, this also potentially pushes Cade Otton all the way up into that like theoretical unicorn range, as he could theoretically be the number one attached to this offense. So like, you do you when it comes to be chasing all that stuff. All right. Cardinals were in a little bit of a barn burner with the Colts in this one. So I will start off talking about like Amari DiMercado, 4% snaps. He gets a red zone opportunity on this one, and then he like turns his ankle and he's out right now. Let's see. Michael Carter was at 44% snaps, 9 for 34, 5 for 2 for 30 in this game. He had a red zone opportunity. I already said DiMercado had a red zone opportunity, and then Bam Knight is at 51% snaps in this one. 3 red zone opportunities. He tugs on one of them. I don't want any of these guys. So you got to be in a bad spot where you're running like you're trying to get something. You're not going to hit any consistency. Like if you're chasing a touchdown, it looks like it's going to be Bam Knight. If you're chasing the receiving work, it looks like it's going to be Michael Carter. I don't want any of them. That's not a good offense. I don't know how much I'm going to get anything out of it. Like I'm chasing a 40-degree day. It doesn't usually interest me unless I'm in a bad spot. All right. Wide receivers, again, there's going to be a lot of vacated stuff here when it comes to the Cardinals. Marvin Harrison out with a concussion right now. Who knows on that one? Michael Wilson, he's getting knocked out with a finger at this point. So like trying to guess on all these ones, you're getting to the point where you're rolling Zay Jones. He's like going to be like your Kendrick Bourne at this point, 79% snaps, 8 for 5 for 79. If you're in your deep enough leagues that you can go chase that one. Dortch was down to 44% snaps with all of this going on in the game. And then Trey McBride, like you're really, if you're the Trey McBride owner, you're hoping that like the Packers forget that like Trey McBride is on the field because there's no other place to throw the football to. And then he does it like 90% snaps, 11 for 8 for 72 and a touchdown. That's off of 5 red zone opportunities on top of that. All right. Chargers. So it does look like whatever's going on with Omarion Hampton's knee, it says right there, likely to miss more than 4 games. I guess it's bad. That's how it goes. So if you're going to be like aggressive on your Vidal shares, remember, the Chargers are one of the teams that have been linked to trying to find a running back. We'll say like Alvin Kamara. So like I don't know how true that is or not, but 67% snaps, 18 for 124, 4 for 3 for 14, and a receiving touchdown. Haskins, 31% snaps in this game. I got to scroll down here. Did get a red zone opportunity compared to the 6 red zone opportunities that Vidal got. Or excuse me, Vidal had, go back to this one. Vidal had 6 red zone carries, 2 red zone targets. He tugged on one of those targets. And then I can go back to Haskins and talk about like the game-winning drive for the Chargers late in the game. Haskins was on the field, so that means that you're buying a less than perfect asset when it comes to Vidal. And Haskins ran all down the field as slow as he is. He's like a 4.8 40 guy and got a block on one of the defenders and sprung Ladd McConkey. Guys like that don't come off field, which means there's going to be a certain amount of work that ain't going to go to Vidal. And if it's the red zone opportunities or the receiving work, like you're buying an imperfect guy. But hopefully, if you're listening to this channel, you already went out and got Vidal, and like he shouldn't be on anybody's wire at this point. All right. As long as Quentin Johnston's out, we can talk about like vacated opportunity, and who knows what is going to be going on with him down the line until we get like injury reports. With vacated opportunities, like Ladd McConkey, 9 for 7 for 100 and a touchdown. In this one, you also got Keandre Lambert-Smith at 28% snap, slight bump. And if you're in your deeper leagues, 83% snaps when it comes to Trey Harris, the second rounder. Tight ends right here, like hopefully Aronde Gadsden is not available in your competitive league, so we've been talking about him for a while. 75% snaps, 8 for 7 for 68. Did have a fumble, but he came back in the game. They kept playing. We'll talk about Bill when it comes down to that stuff here in a second. Chiefs will get the receivers right out of the room because I don't care about the receivers for this last week for the Chiefs because Rashee Rice was unsuspended. And, so whatever happened last week is probably not going to carry over into Rashee Rice. Now, if you're wondering, would I be rolling Rashee Rice? Yes. Do I think he's going to be on some type of snap count? Maybe. That's how I would view that one. Running backs, you're back to rolling Isaiah Pacheco. It does appear at this point. 77% snaps, 4 red zone carries. That's compared to Hunt. 30% snaps, 1 red zone carry, 1 target. And then Brashad Smith was relatively consistent. 9% snaps, 4 for 3 for 21. He's going to tug. And he's going to become a Jarrett McKinnon red zone vulture at this point. All right. Colts in this one, and I got to go talk about, I think the only thing I got written down for the Colts is, so after Adonai Mitchell lost the game for the Rams game for the Colts, he goes down to 9% snaps, and then he's a healthy scratch. The other thing to talk about with the Colts is I get a freak accident with Anthony Richardson where he had an exercise band snap, I guess, and hit him in the face. So I guess he's done for the year on IR. If you're into that stuff, let's see. Redskins on Monday night. 2 fumbles, costly fumbles for the Redskins. So one was on Jaden Daniels. I don't see how they're going to put it on Bill. I think it was Bill that was in the game. The other one was a weak fumble on Bill. He did come back in the game, 17 for 61 on his 66% snaps, 1 for 1 for 7. Very good matchup against the Cowboys. So and that's with, where's he at? Chris Rodriguez after limited practices, 2% snaps overall in the game. In this one, so the only other guy would be Jeremy Nichols being the trustworthy guy at 32% snaps. And if Bill continues to fumble, the other guys will eat into him. But at this point, if they have enough faith to put Bill back on the field, back fumbles, not good, but they put him back on the field. So they kind of knew that was going to happen anyway. Nothing else to talk about when it comes to the Redskins, unless you're going to be chasing your Zach Ertz again. Vacated targets tend to go to running backs first and tight end second, and that's with your Noah Brown being out and Scary Terry being out. And I don't got any news on either of those guys right now. All right, Cowboys. So Miles Sanders, season-ending IR with knee, and then Blue, only 9% snaps. If you're wondering, it does look like CeeDee Lamb will play, or whatever looking good means in fantasy football land. I don't know. You could speculate if this is definitely going to downgrade Pickens. I don't know how much it's going to downgrade Pickens. If it's going to be one of those 1A, 1B situations, or if it's going to tumble them all the way down into wide receiver 2 range. I can imagine that even at this point with CeeDee Lamb, he ain't going to be 100%, and maybe you're going to get a snap count. I would still roll Pickens for the time being if you're wondering about that. But I could also see that some of this remains consistent, and the Cowboys get really fun down the line with these guys. Now, the main thing that I would be looking at when it comes to the Cowboys is this obviously downgrades Jake Ferguson, but in this one on 67% snaps. 3 red zone opportunities. He tugged on one of them. I imagine that the red zone opportunities will stay relatively consistent. He just probably goes from set and forget tight end to one of those weekly roll tight end ones that if you're looking to upgrade him, now would be the time to be a little aggressive on your Ferguson. And I'm not talking about trade. I'm talking about with the tight ends that are available out there. All right. Dolphins. So you got 90% snaps for Devin Achane at this point. And remember, fantasy comes down to 12 guys. So 90% snaps, Devin Achane. Red zone opportunities on top of receiving work. That's how you got. That's all you got to know on that one. When it comes to the Dolphins, Malik Washington, 2 red zone opportunities. In this game, he goes from -9 air yards to 8 air yards. So with the red zone opportunities, eventually he's going to tuck. I don't know how much I'm really interested in that overall. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine was at 63% snaps in this game. Waller jumps all the way to 69% snaps from 58% snaps. It was a really ugly game until he scored with 45 seconds left to go in the game. Eagles, I don't have a lot to say at all when it comes to the Eagles. If they're a bad offense, they're a bad offense. That's the long and short of it. So This is one of those things, and we'll talk about like some of these guys down the line. If you're trying to salvage your season, put these guys together with a bag of chips, and then see if you can like upgrade. And we're talking like the limited amount of guys that have the ability to win leagues, like your JSN. You could put a couple guys together, and especially like less competitive leagues, and maybe go have a chance to go after some of these guys because of the name value of some of the players that are going to be out there. Falcons at this point, so like Bijan, where's it not Bijan? Algier, Vulture's one of the touchdowns for Bijan in this one, and then you're looking at a surprise scratch with Ray McLeod in this one, and then with Darnell Mooney being out with that hamstring, you get Casey Washington jumping all the way to 80% snaps. This is one of the guys like your Parker Washington for the Jags that are probably never going to be great, but you're probably good at football. Kyle Pitts, 93% snaps in this one. He does have 2 red zone opportunities on top of that. And so like now you're talking about like him being in the same tier as Jake Ferguson with CeeDee Lamb coming back. Giants. So remember that your Jackson Dart shares, like he's going to be a rookie. Some of these matchups are likely going to be very non-predictive, like the Eagles, where theoretically I could have been benching the guy. I rolled him because you're chasing after the ability to win your league when it comes to rushing upside. It's the same concept with your Justin Fields. Like you're probably going to have some very bad weeks when it comes to Jackson Dart. You also are going to have the ability to have like multiple touchdowns, and if Cam Scatterboo had not vultured 3 rushing touchdowns, you could have this like massive spike week when it comes to like Jackson Dart. So it's still going to be there where you get like multiple touchdowns, and you're also going to have weeks where probably nothing is working and you have multiple turnovers at that point. So that's how I would look at that. Now with Tyrone Tracy being back, he did have a red zone opportunity, 32% snaps, and then Devin Singletary falls all the way down to 6. I was kind of expecting something like this to probably occur. And then Cam Scatterboo is still going to be lingering in that like league winner category. 74% snaps, 6 red zone opportunities. And again, he tugged on all 3 of those. Wide receivers, and we'll talk about Theo Johnson here in a second. So Wan'Dale Robinson, 100% snaps, like probably should just forget about him, set and forget at this point for the rest of the season because of the situation. Our boy, little Jordan Humphrey off the practice squad jumps to 80% snaps, 8 for 4 for 55 in this game. Let's see. 2 red zone opportunity on top of that. I don't know how consistent that's going to be. And unless he gets signed, I probably would not be chasing that. That's also with Slayton being out with a hamstring. And all right, Theo Johnson, 94% snaps, 4 for 2 for 27. And again, like I think the thought process is correct about chasing the potential that you're going to get, like the unicorn touch of the offense. It's going to be like very unpredictable because of Jackson Dart and how the offense is probably going to function with Jackson Dart's arms and legs being the focal point and then being able to predict where it's going to go outside of like tight end can't break my heart. That's how I would break some of that stuff down. Jaguars, not a lot to say about the running backs. They remained relatively consistent. 62% snaps for ETN. Tootin was at 14% snaps, and then LaQuint Allen was at 24% snaps. All consistent. Not a lot to talk about when it comes to the wide receivers. Travis Hunter was up to 78% snaps and 7 targets. De'Ami Brown, 64% snaps, and then Parker Washington was at 33% snaps. And I believe Tim Patrick did vulture a touchdown on his 18% snaps also. Now, with Brenton Strange being out, you did get Hunter Long going to 80% snaps, and again, I probably would not be necessarily chasing that. I do like Hunter Long as a prospect. I don't know how much with some of the uncertainty like it would matter too much overall going on. Jets, this is the same problem I already talked about a little bit with Jackson Dart. Justin Fields had like negative 10 yards. The Jets did because of the sacks on top of the low passing volume. On top of that, running backs, if you care anything about the Jets offense, and I probably don't at this point, 74% snaps for Brees. And then Isaiah Davis was at 26% snaps. I did not write down any red zone opportunities on these guys. I will just say with Garrett Wilson being out for the foreseeable future with that hyperextended knee right there, if you're in deep enough, dark enough leagues that you'd be chasing anybody, it'd probably be like a 4th round draft pick, Adrian Smith, 60% snaps. You're also looking at 88% snaps going to Josh Reynolds, 19% snaps going to Tyler Johnson. Alan Lazard was a healthy scratch. If for some reason like Mason Taylor gets dropped at this point, 96% snaps, only one target for 2 yards. I will say that, like, again, you have a theoretical unicorn with Mason Taylor. So like if you got him, like I'd probably be rolling him. I don't know what type of consistency you're going to get out of him. Again, tight ends tend to be very dependent on red zone opportunities. And like, I just don't know if you can count on any type of opportunities overall with the Jets. So like sometimes the bad offenses are the ones to be staying away from. Overall, Lions, about the only thing I got on them is you get Khalif Raymond right here, down to 4% snaps, and then Tesla was up to 46% snaps. I don't know how relevant that's going to be outside of like a non-predictive spike week overall. Limited amount of guys are going to have the ability to win leagues right now. You're looking at like Josh Jacobs, 79% snaps, 18 for 93, 2 touchdowns, 5 for 57. And again, like, red zone opportunities attached to good offenses, receiving work. So if you could put guys together and go after these guys and be aggressive, like the right type of thing, like maybe like a Bill, and if you're going to be aggressive, like Justin Jefferson or something like that, get out from underneath some of these guys that like are definitely not going to probably win you a league at this point, and just make an aggressive offer on some of these guys that do appear that they have the ability to win league. And send it to a guy and see if they can't say no to an aggressive offer. That's how I would deal with some of these guys. We're getting to the point where like we kind of know, and I don't know how many guys you're going to have the ability to go out and get if they're going to be able to win your league. All right, wide receivers. So still no news right now on your Christian Watsons coming off that pup, and then you're looking at Dontavian Wicks being out right now with an ankle, 34% snaps. Heath was at 46% snaps. Savion Williams at 11% snaps. And then you can look at Dobbs at 85% snaps. And Tucker Kraft, I think, had another red zone opportunity, and he tugged on it on top of that. I bring up Dobbs and Kraft is they're going to eat into any theoretical upside with Golden, and that's with Christian Watson coming back. If you start getting cute with Matthew Golden, you're going to miss the spike weeks that's going to occur. 69% snaps, 5 for 3 for 86, and that's off of 2 more carries that he did 16 yards. Yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of sub 40-degree days. There's going to be any given week, there can be a 40-degree day just because of a touchdown catch, and then you're going to probably get like a couple of this massive, massive weeks. Now, Christian Watson also is going to likely have that within his range of outcomes, and it just depends on like what your build is when it comes to rolling those guys out there. But you're probably to the point with Golden that if you have the right build, you're just setting them in your lineup, and you're going to deal with the bad days because you're also going to have the good days to go along with it. Again, limited amount of good offenses and staying away from bad offenses is probably a good thing. Now, with your Panthers, I will talk about this with Chuba Hubbard. You may get at least one more week of full Rico, and that's because like Chuba Hubbard hasn't practiced yet. And until we get like limited practices, and we're not going to know that until tomorrow, even with limited practices, they can wait until like Chuba is 100% before we can start worrying about like what the snap share is going to be. Is it going to be 50-50? Is it going to be the right work to the wrong guy? Stuff like that are going to be going on between these two guys. I told my co-manager in my main money league when it comes to Rico that we're eventually looking at Rico going to probably like a low-end RB2 to a high-end RB2, somewhere with that range, with Chuba Hubbard coming back. I don't think we're going to get, like it says right there, like full set take over the backfield. I don't think that's going to occur. It's going to be some type of split, and it just really depends on what the split is. And again, the two main things are going to be like receiving work and red zone opportunity. All that, like the 206 yards in week 5 and the 103 yards in week 6. And remember, these are like two of really bad defenses in the Dolphins and the Cowboys. Jets are struggling also on top of that. So like it may not matter regardless. Overall, just bulk usage. Guys are going to eventually fall in the end zone. 93% snaps for Tet. I don't need to know how the sausage is made. 5 for 3 for 29. 2 red zone opportunities. He scores on both of them. I probably don't care about the rest of the wide receivers for the Panthers. No news on Jalen Coker. This would interest me a little bit, but it all comes down to like, how good we think the offense is going to be in Bryce Young. And he's serviceable right now, but that's riding Rico. When it comes down to that, tight ends with Jatavion Sanders, you're looking at Tommy Tremble, 73% snaps, and Mitchell Evans at 58. That's how they're running with 2 tights a lot, it looks like. All right. Patriots are up next. and they're just running Drake May. That's the whole offense is run through Drake May. Yeah, limited amount of guys are going to have the ability to win leagues. He was one of them, so hopefully you drafted him and your co-manager didn't like stab you in the back during the draft, like me. I have to talk about the running backs. I will talk about the tight ends and the wide receivers so you get an idea because they don't care about your fantasy lineup. So 64% snaps for Austin Hooper, 83% snaps for Hunter Henry. They're running a lot of two tight ends. That's what they kind of want to be in, it looks like. Stephon Diggs, only 59% snaps. They don't care where the football goes to. Pop Douglas, 25% snaps. He scores on limited opportunity. Kayshon Boutte down to 67% snaps, 5 for 5 for 93 and 2 touchdowns because they're running their offense the way that they want to run it. Matt Collins, 55% snaps. And you also had Kyle Williams at 22% snaps. A wild Efton Chisholm's sighting, 3% snaps. He was the preseason hype guy working out of the slot. And I got to bring all that up to talk about your Ramondre Stevenson, 72% snaps. He's the guy they trust. It doesn't matter about the fumbles. He's the guy that they want on the field. It doesn't matter how inefficient he is, 13 for 18, and then another target because you only get 30% snaps for Travion Henderson. He does 9 carries and another 2 targets, and he may be marginally more efficient. They don't care because it's going through Drake May, either his arm or his legs at this point, and everybody else is just along for the ride when it comes down to that. All right, Raiders, not a lot to talk about with them in the running back room. Dylan Labe did get injured with a hamstring, but he was not necessarily part of the offense. And then Genty is at 79% snaps, so that's all you really care about. Tight ends, we'll talk about this first. So Brock Bowers supposedly, it says, like, could sit for the long haul, what that means right now. Week 8 bye for the Raiders, so you're definitely expecting that you're going to miss Brock Bowers one more week. That would move Michael Mayer all the way up. Probably I would probably be starting him at this point overall. And then wide receivers, Deontay Thornton down to 3% snaps, and then Becht was up to 75% snaps. Part of this could be because of the Bowers injury, but the other part of it is going to be that, like, whatever they wanted to see out of Thornton, they ain't seeing it. On that one. All right. Let's see. Rams are up next, and I already talked about this a little bit to start this video off. I hope it was this video before I got distracted. So Puka, who knows what's going to go on with his ankle at this point. They do have a week 8 bye. Would not surprise me that he sits out until week 9 at this point. To be a little aggressive on your Jordan Whittington, 92% snaps, 4 for 3 for 23. He is like a poor man's version of Puka when it comes to his ability to function within the offense as a blocker. Puka is kind of like a fullback and tight end with how they use him. Not going to be surprised that that stays consistent. So I would not be really surprised that Jordan Whittington gets double-digit opportunities in week 7 against Jacksonville. Really not going to be surprised by that at all. Now, vacated targets tend to go to running backs and then tight end second. I could also see that, like, Devontae Adams has like a 60% target share this week if you're going to be chasing that. I don't think even if Tutu Atwell is healthy, he's going to be that part of the offense because he does not play the role that Puka / Jordan Whittington can play within the offense, if you're wondering about that. Tyler Higbee, 66% snaps in this game. You also got Davis Allen at 40% snaps, and if you're chasing your second round draft pick in your dynasty leagues, Ferguson was up to 32% snaps. Blake Corum did go down with an ankle, but he was back up to relatively where he was at as the cuff at 23% snaps before the ankle injury. And then Kyron Williams like 75% snaps overall. In what was a closer game than I think like people generally were expecting with Cooper Rush out there. They played a little bit more conservative. Probably not surprising. Trying to make the Ravens actually beat them. Now, with the Ravens, I ain't got nothing to talk about with them because of the fact that you're looking at their bye week coming up, and then Lamar Jackson's going to come back. So what the offense looked like under Cooper Rush probably doesn't matter. It just really matters what it's going to look like when they come back, and they're having a hard time right now with the Ravens. So the big thing is, like, did see rumors Mark Andrews would be one of the guys that would be on the trade block coming up here if you want to speculate on all that stuff. All right, Saints. So speaking of trade blocks in this one, so supposedly Alvin Kamara has told the Saints that he does not want to be dealt. That's, again, this is all Twitter / Reddit rumors, all that stuff that's out there. Like, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. It's just really easy to speculate that in the direction of what maximizes return versus the limited amount of opportunity I have to or capital I have to put into it. So in this case with Alvin Kamara, him saying that is probably about the only negotiation tactic he has about not getting shipped to a bad team versus being shipped to someplace he wants to go. That's how I look at that. I don't see how they hold on to him. That doesn't make any sense. You also get Kendre Miller remaining consistent at 39% snaps in this game. Scrolling down here, all 4 red zone opportunities went to Kamara in this one. Rashid Shaheed, his snap share continues to go down all the way to 61% snaps this week. No equal and opposite reaction to anybody. Taysom Hill did get in the game and vulture a red zone opportunity. The first red zone opportunity he was able to vulture. So again, like probably backing away from anything that I can. Again, if you could put Calvin Kamara with somebody else and go get one of those league winners because like they're not paying attention to some of this stuff, like, yeah, that's probably how I would do it. But you got to be in the right league and you got to be in the right situation to be able to send that to. But those are the aggressive moves that you have to make if you want to like have the opportunity to win your league. That's how I would view that. Seahawks, and again, this is a team that we thought were going to run the football and run the football effectively, and they haven't been able to run the football effectively. 35% snaps when it comes to Kenneth Walker. 2 red zone opportunity. Charbonnet was at 60% snaps. He did have 6 red zone opportunities in this game. So like, yeah, if I have to, it's going to be Charbonnet, and I don't want to at this point. JSN would be another one of those league winner types. I don't know how you are able to go pry him away from anybody's cold dead hands unless you make a very aggressive offer. That means overpaying on a guy because of the limited opportunities for guys that are going to be able to win your leagues that are out there. And so if you can make a very aggressive trade to go get these guys, like Justin Jefferson owners probably can go get Jackson Smith-Njigba at this point, and I would probably make that trade. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, Steelers right here. So with Calvin Austin being out and then picking up a DMP, right now, like you are looking at vacated opportunities for the Steelers again. I don't know who the wide receiver is going to be. 25% snaps for Roman Wilson. You're looking at Skronik at 17% snaps, and then Scotty Miller was at 44% snaps. None of them were very much in the passing game. Freiermuth was down 36% snaps. Jonnu Smith was at 69% snaps. Connor Hayward, 10% snaps. He bolstered a touchdown. And that's why I said, like, right now I'd be somewhat aggressive on Darnell Washington because of the if, buts, and maybes that you're going to get at 80% snaps. Now, if you're wondering about the wide receiver or running backs at this point, 53% snaps for Jaylen Warren. In this one, I didn't write down any red zone opportunities on these guys. If you're wondering, 19% snaps for Caleb Johnson. So it stayed consistent. It did not go up after the bye week. And then Kenneth Gainwell at 34% snaps on that one. Texans, maybe you're going to get some type of better integration of Woody Marks into the offense after the bye week. But hopefully you weren't buying Woody Marks to potentially win your league at this point. Whatever that means over there on the side. Not a lot else to say about them. With the Titans firing their head coach and the offensive line coach, who is the father of the head coach in this point, you're also looking at Calvin Ridley being out with a hamstring at this point. That's why I would say like you could be a little aggressive on your Alick AO minor. I don't think he's going to be much more than maybe like capped out as a wide receiver 2 for a lot of reasons. Van Jefferson was at 74% snaps, like Dyke or DK or whatever, 56% snaps. And then Lockett does look like he's getting phased out of the offense at 33% snaps. Did not get the usage flop to remain consistent with Gunnar Helm, 48% snaps. And then Chig, 57% snaps, 6 for 6 for 46. Now, running backs, again, chasing the right usage versus like just chasing. You got to be in the right situation where you have to go out and chase Tajay Spears. Probably never going to be a lot of red zone opportunity. It probably will get receiving work. It's got to get design receiving work. That may come down to it. You're not going to get some of the check down monster stuff because he's probably not going to stay in the field to be the pass blocker either. So maybe you get the usage flop. You're not going to get totally the right usage flop overall when it comes to them. Maybe the firing of the head coach is something to be going after again. You have to be the right situation and be wanting to chase your Tajay Spears. Not uninterested, but like again, I have to be like the right league, the right place to want to go out there and do that. And I may be in that position in one of my leagues that I have to be like a little bit more dumpster divery with my running back situation. All right, finally with the Vikings, right now with the news, you're looking at potential JJ McCarthy could return to practice this week if everything goes well. coming out of the bye week. And then, so you're waiting on this. So it says Carson Wentz not fully healthy. That may be the excuse to put JJ McCarthy back into the offense. And the moment you see limited JJ McCarthy and DMP when it comes to Carson Wentz, you're selling everything that's the Vikings and getting what you can get for him. And that's why I say like that. That's why like if you're the right guy and you have like a Justin Jefferson, you can go get like a JSN. You can put Justin Jefferson together with like Kenneth Walker and go like, hey, give me JSN. And hopefully the guy's like, yeah, it's Justin Jefferson, not realizing that they're buying like maybe a wide receiver 3 at this point if JJ McCarthy comes back and you're going to go after that league winner. Something along those lines. And, you know, like I don't necessarily like speculating on those type of trade opportunities, but like that's what you're looking at. If you're wondering, get them off your roster and take what you can get for them and stop screwing around trying to maximize your return. So anyway, that's about what I got, and I'll see you guys when I see you.